Italy just made a decision that could redefine Western civilization. And if you think that this is just another European law, you're missing the point. What Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni is about to do will send shockwaves through every nation that values freedom, sovereignty, and the survival of its culture. Make sure to stick with me to the very end of this video, because what you're about to hear isn't just happening in Rome. It's beginning to happen all over the continent and beyond. Hey gang, it's me, Dr. Steve, your Patriot Professor, celebrating yet another day in the Trumpian golden age that you made possible back in November of 2024. So if you want a front row seat on how you continue to change the world in ways you never even imagined, make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. Italy's ruling party, the Brothers of Italy, has introduced sweeping legislation to ban the burka and niqab in every public space across the country. Schools, shops, offices, and streets. The bill also requires mandatory identification checks for anyone wearing full face coverings in public, giving police the authority to stop and document individuals without prior suspicion, effectively making compliance and social integration non-negotiable. The law applies uniformly across Italian society with no religious exemptions, signaling that national law supersedes all claims to alternative legal frameworks. Violators will face inordinate fines of up to $3,000. The law would follow the lead of some Italian regions like Lombardy and towns like Novara, who've previously enacted local restrictions on security grounds, building on a general Italian law against concealing identity in public. Now, spearheading this effort is none other than Italy's nationalist populist Prime Minister par excellence, Giorgia Meloni, who is not mincing words. She's repeatedly stated that there is a fundamental compatibility problem between Islamic culture and the Christian values that built Europe, noting that most of the Islamic cultural centers in Italy are financed by Saudi Arabia and Qatar. She's made it clear that as long as she is prime minister, Italy will not allow foreign governments to shape its public life or undermine its constitutional values. And that's absolutely key to this. This obviously isn't about clothing. This isn't about fashion. It's about something far bigger. Cultural separatism, foreign influence, and the question of whether Western nations will defend their unique identities or surrender that piece by piece. Andrea Del Mastro, one of the lawmakers behind this bill, put it plainly on Facebook. Religious freedom is sacred, but it must be exercised in the open, in full respect of our Constitution and the principles of the Italian state. Now, notice the framing there. Religious freedom is not absolute. It's conditional on integration with shared civic norms that are themselves rooted in a more dominant religious tradition. Public law trumps private ideology, and that's where the battle line is being drawn. Under Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni's nationalist populist government, Italy has slashed migrant arrivals to their nation by nearly half through aggressive deals with North African countries. They've detained asylum seekers for up to 2 years while processing claims. They've weakened integration policies, and they've deported imams for comments made at political rallies. In fact, between January of 2023 and July of 2024, Italy expelled 130 people for state security and arrested 36, quote, extremists. And despite 1.5 million Muslims living in Italy, the nation still does not officially recognize Islam as a legitimate and legally protected religion. And there are no signs that's going to change anytime soon. But what's so key here is that what's happening with Italy is actually happening with the whole of Europe. The entire continent has been wrestling with the question for decades: can nations absorb any practice, any belief, any separatist ideology without consequences? France became the first Western country to answer with a resolute no back in 2011, banning full-face veils in public. By 2015, French authorities had issued over 1,500 fines under the law. Belgium, Denmark, Austria, Switzerland, they've all followed. The European Court of Human Rights actually has been upholding these bans, ruling that governments do have the right to promote social cohesion and protect living together as core principles of public life. Italy already had a 1970s era law prohibiting complete face coverings in public, but it didn't specifically mention religious garments. What Meloni's party is proposing goes way farther than that. It's a nationwide ban targeting cultural separatism as part of a broader strategy to protect Italy's national sovereignty. The bill also includes transparency rules for mosque funding, stricter penalties for forced marriages, and criminal consequences for virginity testing. Sarah Kalani, head of immigration for the Brothers of Italy, said at a press conference, quote, "The law against Islamic separatism represents a necessary step to protect Italian identity and the freedom of women." And she emphasized that Italy applies its laws based on a specific set of values. Translation: one nation, one legal framework, one shared public space. No parallel societies, no foreign funding dictating cultural norms. But as it turns out, this is just the tip of the spear. What we're seeing in Italy is spreading throughout the entirety of the European continent. And we're about to see why what's happening in Italy is only just the beginning. Hey everyone, Dr. Steve here. I'm thrilled to invite you to something special happening this Monday, January 26th. We're hosting a live evening called A Vision for Christian Art and Cultural Renewal, raising artists who renew communities. And I'm telling you, this conversation is going to change how you think about culture, beauty, and the future. See, it's not just about art or aesthetics. It's about family, faith, freedom. It's about how we raise the next generation of artists who will renew our communities and transform culture toward truth and beauty. And right now, we desperately need this vision. I'll be joined by Kevin Goss from the Lancaster Academy of the Performing Arts and the Worldview Institute for a night of real conversation about how Christian artists can shape culture and what that means for all of us. So here's the best part. When you RSVP today, you're going to get a free copy of my book, Beauty Matters. You'll take home a resource that continues this conversation long after the event ends. Again, Monday, January 26th, 7 p.m. at 1025 Columbia Avenue in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Limited seats, so head to the link below and RSVP now. You don't want to miss this. I'll see you there. These questions of what it really means to be European and what cultures are compatible with European values are the kinds of questions that arise with the advent of something scholars call civilizational populism. Civilization, according to Harvard scholar Sam Huntington, is the highest cultural grouping of people and the broadest level of social identity constituted by boundaries, borders, economy, culture. And for an increasing number of European populace, they believe that their unique European civilization is being threatened by a foreign invasion, one that's being allowed into their countries by a corrupt globalist elite centered in Brussels, the bullies in Brussels, right, in the EU, for their own political power and affluence. For example, open borders allow for the mass importation of cheap labor, which maximizes corporate profits, a significant portion of which go to pay off greedy politicians who promise to keep those borders open. And when there's a mass outcry against this, when the people of a nation rise up and demand their borders be closed and their national sovereignty defended, they're branded and disparaged as far-right racist xenophobes, like we hear ad nauseum from the likes of Keir Starmer in Britain. But the problem here is that those taunts, that obviously are dishonest caricatures, they're only further fueling the rise of civilizationalist populism, particularly its religious dimension. And so the result is that this massive backlash all throughout the West, particularly in Europe, is that Christianity is once again returning to the public square. Even in the most secularized parts of Europe, like Sweden and the Netherlands, Christianity is reemerging as the preeminent principle for the recovery of a distinctively European culture and politics. Geert Wilders, Jimmy Åkesson, Marine Le Pen, Giorgia Meloni, of course Viktor Orban in Hungary, and the newly elected president of Poland, Karol Nawrocki, they're all proclaiming the need for Christianity to return to the public square so as to provide a bulwark against the Islamification of their respective cultures. Italy and a growing number of European nations are drawing the line. The message is unmistakable. Public spaces belong to all Italians. No foreign ideology will override national law. Women will be protected. Civic unity will be enforced. And for Americans watching this unfold, the lesson is clear. Our streets, our schools, our public institutions are facing similar tests. Debates over assimilation, public expression, and the balance between freedom and national cohesion. What's happening in Europe involves ultimately all of us. Bold action preserves civilization. Hesitation invites fragmentation. The choice has never been clearer.